Kundalini awakening is not about transcending material life. It's about to bring the divine into material life. You can see how that connects now to my Marie Kondo journey, which is all about finding the divine based on Shintoism, finding the divine in everyday things and the spirit in things. So that was beautifully connected. And then my final journey, which was actually breath work. I tried to kill myself in my journey, but actually I ended up having a rebirth. And that was imagine myself being born. I actually tried to stay in the womb. I didn't want to come out. I realized that I've created a series of comfort zones, some more glittering than others in my life. That was sort of tied it all together. And every time now, I create comfort zones for myself that it's not obvious from the outside. Sometimes I get stuck. Sometimes I just get comfortable. And in order to grow, and you've got to actually get out of the comfort zone and know it's safe outside and that you're loved. I was welcomed into the world. In our material world, we're actually surrounded by all the decisions we've made in our lives. And they're not always obvious because, as I've discovered, you think you're a tidy minimalist, but actually they're all around your home, or all these decisions you've made, dreams that you've had, and they're all embedded in your possessions. The fundamental concept is you choose to surround yourself only with the things that spark joy for you now and that align with your future vision of yourself. There's a lot of shame, there's a lot of embarrassment and vulnerability, and ultimately courage involved in saying, I no longer am going to pursue this dream, and I'm going to let go of that thing that represented the dream to me.
Welcome to the Awakening Entrepreneur Podcast. This show is for entrepreneurs that have chosen to define their life beyond the material. They have followed their soul on a hero's journey towards the mystery of the spiritual. I'm your host, Garrett Ng. Each episode will be learning from awakened entrepreneurs and spiritual thought leaders. They have broken through the mold of being ordinary to extraordinary, challenging our paradigm, shining lights to the dark, giving hope when there is doubt. The moment of truth is upon us. It is time to transcend our world from fear to love. Are you ready? Let's go! Welcome to this week's Awakening Podcast. Today we're going to talk about finding the divine in the material world. This is a very core topic I want to uncover because as we discover the spiritual world, it's like, whoa, there's a whole new dimension or multiple dimensions that we never heard of, no one taught us about. And it's very easy to get like floaty in the sky. My wife says like, well, this is the reality. No, that's not the reality. It's only one part of the reality. We are living in the material world and we are having human experiences. So how do we find the divine within this material world? So our guest today is one of the my dear platinum sister from Tony Robbins, and she's a recovering corporate executive and a startup tech advisor who's worked with some of the world's major brands, including the aviation industry, the clean tech, telecommunication industry. Or I just know her as this tech guru. Normally you're associated like guys and glasses and geeks, but you can call Nicky a guest today a geek as well, like at least a part of her.
A glitter geek, Gary. I'm a glitter geek.
Glitter geek. That's the first time I've heard that term. I love it. So she's developed a passion for grassroots organizing and community building across tech, sports, and women leadership. She's a nerd path seeker for the past several years, exploring sacred ceremony rituals around the world. During the Great Reset of 2020, Nicky has completed the Harvard MBA for Tidying with Marie Kondo and is launching a transformational tidying business combining of her love for rituals, neuroscience, and beautiful, welcoming spaces. The humbleness of tidying as a vehicle for profound change is particularly appealing. Like this is something I personally went through. The Marie Kondo is this sacredness and this Zen-like approach, and I'm just dabbling on it. And so I'm really looking forward to today. Tech nerdiness and spirituality and Marie Kondo and women leadership. So welcome, Nicky Williamson.
Hi, Gary. I'm so excited to be here with you. And I was teasing you a little bit with the quote about finding the divine in the material world, because I know that you're about transcending the material world. So it was a bit of a tease, but it's also core to what I'm actually discovering. And it ties together so many of the things that you and I are both interested in. So I'm really excited to share it with you, because I think we both have nerds and seeker deep in our DNA. We're a match made in heaven today, I think.
So, Nicky, like I haven't asked you this. I don't know, when did you started to awaken to beyond the five senses world and there's more to life? I know that it only happened to me like 2.5 years ago. When did it happen to you? Is it a gradual process? Was it like a bomb or something just dropped on you?
Gosh, I've always had I can't even say the word spiritual without feeling a bit strange. And you'll notice that I slip over it sometimes. I don't have a religious background in my family. In fact, I had to force my parents to let me go to confirmation when I was 12, because they both, actually now when I think about it, I now have tied it all together with my family background. So in terms of traditional religion, my parents had both had terrible experiences with religion in their family. So religion in terms of spirituality wasn't on the family's agenda at all. So I pushed them to let me go to confirmation, which I did. But I never had a real interest in organized religion, but loved travel. From my teens onward, I got a love of adventure from my German, Australian, Canadian sort of family. And that takes you, in my early 20s, I was exploring religious art in churches and feeling just a sense of mystery sometimes that I couldn't explain. And then very attracted to Asian, sort of the ritual and the mystery of Japan, of Cambodia, of all of those sorts of, and Chinese culture as well. And also the ancestor respect and worship in Asian cultures. So, but really, I think you were at the true beginning of my awakening. You were there, Gary, because I've tied it all together. And for one of our plaque gatherings, you remember almost 2, maybe 3 years ago, I organized an Aboriginal smoking ceremony welcome for our international guests, which was actually, I discovered, extremely illegal after the fact. The elder who did it told me afterwards the police came to tell him to put the fire out afterwards. But you remember the just absolute beauty of that ritual of burning the eucalyptus leaves and hearing the story and understanding that. And that was really the beginning for me. And, since then, actually went to Abu Dhabi for a spiritual seminar with Tony and Sage Robbins, which was incredible. Went to Costa Rica for ayahuasca, learned to do oneness blessings, and had a truly, probably my first oneness experience. This is a real thread that the deepening of it begins at that smoking ceremony that you were at. Did you remember that?
Yeah, I definitely did. And I thought like, hey, like for the overseas tourists that were coming to Australia experiencing this will be pretty cool. But I myself was pretty touched by the whole experience.
Yeah. And that's another thread in my journey too, that is just realizing in a deep way over the last few years how Indigenous people, in our world, that's Aboriginal people, how they are much closer to oneness. And for me, oneness is partly about nature because there's less noise, and there's something about less noise. And so they're more connected to oneness than other cultures, I think. So one of my passions is also combining that knowing of Indigenous cultures with technology of the 21st century And I guess Marie Kondo is also traditional knowledge that is now being amplified through modern sources. So you can see all the way these threads all tie together.
So I see a lot of threads or open loops.
I was a quilter.
Let's try to, I guess I want to take it a bit deeper in terms of like, a lot of us come from this material world and entrepreneurs and make money, success, and our ego, like the more success and or even the nicer person I am, the more we give, like that's what life is about, right? Especially for personal development. At which stage did it started to shift for you?
Oh, that's a really great question. And you can see I'm doing my Tony Robbins thinking about it. I really, the kind of absolute deep dive into personal development was 2 platinum years. And parallel to the first platinum year was the last year of my father's life, which was very hard. He'd been sick for a while. So his death was probably the most sacred experience of my life. So there's these sort of 2 parallel paths happening at the same time. And I really noticed, I learned all these skills and tools. It's very emotional, as you know, the Tony experience. And I really noticed in the second year how much deeper it was going. And the connection from those of us who had been together for a little while, just watching, observing other people's development and changes. And I know I've had that feedback too. It's an incredible gift to watch someone emerge in that way. So, for me, it was the second year really hit home for me. Oh, this brings together a lot of threads again, too. It was that Date with Destiny in Cairns in 2019, 2018, whatever the year was. Anyway, I'd learned to do a oneness blessing the few months before. I'd actually given my dad, I had a beautiful oneness blessing from Sage Robbins about 3 weeks before Dad died. And then I gave him a oneness blessing the night before he died, which was, obviously just a beautiful experience for me to give him that gift. And then at Date with Destiny, Tony, as you know, says well into the priming processes, can blessings givers or whatever the name is, please stand up. And I just had this flash of intuition that even though I was not an expert, I had a gift to give. And I got up and I did what I had learned and what I remembered with probably 20 people and got back to my seat. And then I just suddenly, and every time I say this, I still get chills. I just suddenly had this shower of light and energy that came through me. And it was through the ground, down through my head and through my body to the ground. And I just had this sense of incredible connection to every single human in the room. And it was a true oneness experience. And that was probably when I really felt things were starting to come together for me. And I think you're trained as a blessing giver too. Have you had that experience?
Not exactly the same, but from a logical mind, that's
I can explain it from a logical.
Well, from a logical mind perspective, like you use your 5 senses to gauge, like, is it working? Is it not working? I remember the spiritual trip. It's like after a 3rd day or something, after numerous meditation sessions, Tony, like said, people are saying that, oh, hey, anyone got feedback from yesterday? Yeah, I saw unicorns, I saw rainbow, I saw my grandparents, my ancestors, and some people seeing Tony turn into Jesus.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah, and then Tony says, like after like quite a few people shared, I know some of you guys are probably thinking, you fuckers, I pay the same amount of money as you, and I'm getting nothing. And he said, don't worry, like it will happen. And so
explain the logical mind bit, because I'm a geek too, and so I love combining these things. There's a great TEDx talk by a neuroscientist who had a stroke in the left side of her brain, which I think is the analytical side of her brain. And she had that oneness experience. So I think when you calm that side of your brain, you have a oneness. You're much more. That's my gift.
Yes, it's like a walkie-talkie. You have to like stop talking for it to receive.
Yeah.
So yeah, from then after maybe the fourth day or so, like it did. Wow, I'm feeling something like energy here or energy on the hand or whatever I felt through. Like, and subsequently, other sequence of events that has happened. Like, there's no doubt that that's hey, like I'm getting like energy, and you feel it. So something is happening, and then from then, like synchronicities and other coincidences and other things like especially towards the spiritual side of things or suddenly having an urge to look up what Buddhism is about or Taoism. So these are the things I kind of like being pushed in a certain direction. And also emotionally as well. Emotionally, I wasn't as emotional before, especially for the masculine energy that a lot of the men we supposed to be able to compartmentalize a lot of the challenges, the problems, the issues and put in a corner and just internalize it and just keep it there. But the feminine energy or a lot of the what I have personally felt, it just became like very intense for something that I wouldn't have been triggered at all in the past. But now suddenly it's like, whoa, like you shouldn't have done that, she shouldn't have done that, and that shouldn't have happened. So I think it's a lot of integration as well, that the universe is like, hey, you need to like implement the stuff that you're learning.
Oh, well, you've hit another one of my trigger words, integration. Because when I went to Costa Rica, as you know, I went to Rhythmia, and I was called to go to Rhythmia when we were in Cambodia on an adventure trip with the wife of our spiritual leader. People say when you hear the call, you have to go. And they were talking about their experience at Rhythmia, and
Have you heard of ayahuasca like prior to that?
I'd never heard. Well, I knew enough. You know me well enough, and it's long enough in the past that I can say I've done most party drugs. So, I'm not an innocent person. And I actually even thought I don't want to mess with, well, a lot of people say, I don't want to mess with my brain chemistry. But for me, I had actually, as I think Gary, I had already started to develop an interest and pursue an interest in ceremony and shamanism. So she spoke about the shamans, and I was and it was just Zoom. A group of our friends who were there, they flew from Cambodia to Costa Rica. And I went to Amsterdam for another Tony thing, but ended up, and I nearly left Amsterdam. The call was so strong, Mama Ayahuasca. And I ended up going sort of 6 weeks later. But one of the messages I got out of that was you need to integrate. You need to integrate all of these things you've been learning for the past 2 years, deep dive. And also, I have no call to do ayahuasca again right now. Maybe that'll change, but there's zero call right now for me. And it was because one of my biggest messages was integration. And that's really what's been happening for me. Is I think, we spoke about threads. I think that I've been pulling all the threads together, and finally it's making the quilt. It's all emerging, which is so beautiful when I think about it.
So for those that haven't done ayahuasca, or maybe they may have heard of it from other people, what compelled you and the other plats to say that, hey, we are changing our flights and flying there right away? And for you, it was 6 weeks, which is still pretty, like doing a lot of traveling. Yeah.
Gosh. Well, I can only speak for myself. And, we're all on this, and, this group of people is very much into pursuing growth, and not necessarily, and that sounds really self-indulgent, but 3/4 of the people who I've met in that environment, but 100% of the people are on the path. 3/4 of the people use what they learn in just the most astonishingly beautiful way. They go from being driven entrepreneurs to a little bit like yourself, much more open, and contribution becomes a big focus. The dynamic between male and female becomes better understood, and respected, the divine masculine, the divine feminine. So we're all on this path, but for me, it was all the attraction was definitely ceremony and shamanism. And when the first morning, when Jerry, who's the founder and CEO, whose book I'd read everything he'd read, but I never tuned into the fact that this was going to be a visceral, physical experience. And he said, well, hands up who's scared of various kinds of purging? And I went, what have I got myself into? Oh my goodness. And yeah, like Gary, linking back to the Marie Kondo, and it's just, I am experienced, because I think tidying is medicine too, I'm experiencing people purging in really interesting ways. They purge through laughter, they purge in the usual ways, they purge through yawning, they purge through singing. So again, that's like a great link. The ayahuasca is a plant that has been around for, I don't know if it's hundreds or thousands of years, you probably know this better than me, in South America, used as medicine, but medicine is used in a slightly different way in this context. And it's really about opening or clearing away. One of our friends, Mariah, says it's like wiping the window finally on your car. But, here, I'll bring my nerd mode back in. Nerd mode is, I got to do it, Gary. That's me. Nerd mode is the chemical that is released when you're close to death is released in your brain through ayahuasca. And that's why everybody has birth or death experiences in their ayahuasca journeys. And, incredible blessing at Rhythmia. It's such a beautifully curated experience, and everything links. So the journeys link to each other, the yoga the next morning, the debriefing with Jerry, the founder, it just all links together. And I really never talked about the specifics. I can get into them, not into the purging side, just, whatever. But I had some pretty freaky experiences.
Yeah, I love to hear that. But even for the purging for me, like I'll go into it if you're not going to. There are times that like I'm snorting over myself, I'm purging over myself. But when you're in that state, you're conscious of it, but it didn't matter. Like it's
Matter, right?
yeah, like am I in spew? Like have I purged over myself? I don't know. Am I swimming over it? I don't know. Who cares? And that's like complete detachment from this bodily experience, the five senses, and you can go beyond that. Like this, and it may feel like that, hey, these guys are trippy or whatever, but what if the other experiences are just as real, if not more real than what it feels like over here? So I'd love to go really like
I'll tell you a few of them. And you're experienced enough to know that these are journeys and metaphors. So when I talk about birth and rebirth, I know that you know that I was in a safe environment and held by 10 shamans and people who were experienced. It was completely safe. And so, I want to share some of my stories, and I want you to feel okay hearing them, and anybody else who's hearing them.
And everyone, this is just take with a grain of rice, a grain of like peanut butter, whatever you like to take a grain of, because everyone's experience is unique, right?
Yeah. So I'm giving you that caveat because some of them sound scary and dark in the sense that, oh my gosh, this is what's going to happen. Like this was what was on her mind. And so, lots of people start with a bad. I was blessed to start with a good experience. Then I had a terrible experience. And by terrible, I mean you learn from it, but it's really intense. And the good one was still very physically intense, but it was all Technicolor lights. And I think I wrote this all down. I came for clarity and all I got was chaos, was the message on my first night. That was my message, right?
Can I ask about, obviously you go from a conscious state of what's happening around you with none of these, whatever that you're going through. And then there's this stage that you go through. Like for me, it's just like It's like a little circus, like Alice in Wonderland, like, and almost like shaking off the logical brain is trying to tailgate like this
Yeah.
experience. What is it? What is it? And they'll find ways to shake it off. Once they shock away the logical mind, okay, we can do the real show now.
Okay, now I'm seeing the patterns and the LSD, kind of like the classic. I had the classic LSD Technicolor experience. I've done LSD and that was not my experience. So, but I had that classic Technicolor and just incredible, etc. And so that was, I thought, yeah, this is easy. All these people are having terrible experiences, but I'm on it, baby. Cool. Although the doctors, they've got a medical director there, and one of the things he said was people who have those technical, he said that's your brain chemistry being fixed. So if you've got and he's medical guy, so I trust him, even though I'm not sure if the research backs it up yet, but it's brain chemistry adjusting. And, you might have an imbalance of serotonin, blah, blah, blah. I kind of believe that, especially in my case. But anyway, so first night, woohoo, I'm pretty cool. I can hack this. I'm the one who's done all this. Anyway, second night, oh my God, it was so bad. It was horrible. And this is one that I did a lot of purging. And the shaman for the second night, I think a lot of the shamans have been through pretty dark periods in their previous life. So the shaman was a person who'd had a heroin addiction. And but many years in the past, and he served more ayahuasca than anyone else in the world except one of the big shamans. He's so beautiful. He was so beautiful. But I went back for a third cup, which is a lot. I know some of the guys did 6 when he went. But I had this cycle going in my head. Should I and this was part of the thing. And am I sensation seeking? This is part of my pathology, sensation seeking. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. And I went up and I sort of purged the words, because I think words are purged too, Gary. Lots of people we know purge through words. I went up to him and I don't know what I said. I think I blurted out all that rubbish. And this guy who's just very regal, like a junkie king, he said, well, you're here now, aren't you? And, yeah, I'm here now. I'm going to do it. Anyway, I was really violently ill. It was quite dark and really super, super, super dark. And I don't know if it was a second night or another night, but anyway, one of the nights, no, this wasn't the right name. Anyway, I had one of the nights, I had a gigantic Mothman come to see me. And the Mothman appeared several times. And people have, lots of visions of, but I wasn't scared. I asked him, what information do you have for me? And that was when, I just lost my fear completely. And he appeared another time too. So this was the one that would scare people if they didn't know about ayahuasca. So I felt like, I felt like I should have been born a boy. And I've had that sort of in the background, and I'm an only child, et cetera, et cetera. And so I got this idea that the only way to merge back with my soul was if I died. And so I tried 10 different ways to kill myself. Being dropped into a swamp, a big bird took me, jumping off things, and I couldn't kill myself. I really, really, really tried, and I couldn't do it. And I think that's when the giant Mothman came back and said, you're perfect. You're just perfect.
Wow.
You're perfect as you are. And so I get chills telling you about that, because I think I was trying to get back to the moment before I became a girl in the womb.
Wow.
And the Mothman told me, you're completely loved and you're perfect as a baby girl. And
wow.
Isn't that profound? I feel quite emotional. Isn't that amazing?
I find it extremely interesting that, whether it's inside of us or outside of us, it is so creative in the ways that different narrative, different story, different character it uses to teach us these lessons. And these lessons can be like a few seconds, another few seconds, and change it to a different story, different. You start watching like 100 movies within a very short time with really interesting movies that is relevant to you.
I know. Another night, what I realized the next day was a Kundalini awakening. I had a snake trying to get out of my belly for
Wow.
8 hours.
Wow.
A rattlesnake specifically. And part of my thinking, because I went outside, I asked the Mothman, could you please help me get rid of this snake? And I thought I heard him say, it's a rattlesnake you picked up when you were in Canada. I'm afraid it's going to stay there. And I just thought, well, I'll just have to, it's just one of the things I'll have to deal with. I'm going to have a rattlesnake in my stomach. That's just part of that's my life. You know, everyone has their challenges. And then I went back, it was the divine feminine night. And I went back into the room, and the shaman was a woman. It was a women's night, so the shaman was a woman. She was dancing quite erotically and exotically, and the snake came out and started dancing towards her. And I thought, well, this is just the most incredible, what's going on? And then I went back to my room and I thought, I wonder if this is a Kundalini awakening. This is a snake and whatever. And this is, again, another tying the threads together. And later, the first thing I saw when I said, what is a Kundalini awakening? I can't remember. The image was immediately of the snake. Oh, that's what happened. And this is what the quote was. A Kundalini awakening is not about transcending material life. It's about to bring the divine into material life. And you can see how that connects now to my Marie Kondo journey, which is all about finding the divine based on Shintoism, finding the divine in everyday things and the spirit in things. So that was beautifully connected. And then my final journey, which was actually breath work. I tried to kill myself in my journey, but actually I ended up having a rebirth, and that was imagine myself being born. I actually tried to stay in the womb. I didn't want to come out. And I had the experience in the final breathwork section.
You didn't want to come out, was it because it was too comfortable or it was too scary outside?
Right. So I realized that I've created a series of comfort zones, some more glittering than others in my life. And that was sort of tied it all together. And every time now, I create comfort zones for myself that it's not obvious from the outside. And sometimes I get stuck, sometimes I just get comfortable. And in order to grow, and you've got to actually get out of the comfort zone and know it's safe outside and that you're loved. I was welcomed into the world. That was it. Breathwork, final journey. I was welcomed to my father as a beautiful girl, you know, sort of all tied together. And so I don't think I've ever tied it all together like that before, you know, but I know ayahuasca, I don't like telling the stories because I don't want to pre-frame people's experience of ayahuasca. I did, you know, our Junkie King experienced him as the jaguar. I actually saw the jaguar face on him, which I think you know is the symbol for Mama Ayahuasca. So, wow. So tell me, did you have that kind of stuff happening too?
I think most, like 90% of my experiences are all pretty nice. So, yeah, like I haven't had any like depth, which I hear a lot of people having those experiences. It's almost like it's the equivalent for the ego depth to happen. I just remember there was one time that actually there's numerous times that it got difficult for whatever the reason.
Yes.
And they say return to the breath. It's like, hey, and all you need to do is remember that you're loved, like where your heart is, and that's fine. And it works most of the time. Yeah. But then there's a few occasions, it's like, I'm breathing, I'm surrendering, my posture is good. Dude, like this feeling is not going away yet. Like what's going on? It's almost like the I just came back from a ski trip. It's almost like first time learning skiing.
Yeah.
They say you plow and you stop, and you plow. Dude, it's not stopping. It's not an instant stop. And so when it doesn't stop quickly, especially if you're picking up speed, you get freaked out and you start to lean back, and it makes it even worse. So it's almost like, I'm breathing. It's not stopping right away. What's going on? It's not working. But yeah, like if you stick to the principle of what the shaman teaches you to do, I think you're in pretty good hands. Eventually, the lessons will come through. The Law of One, which is one of the books that's been channeled, it says, suffering is a catalyst for spiritual growth, so spiritual awakening. So sometimes when we don't experience the other side, we don't know what we're missing or what we really have. So I'm grateful for every experience that I've experienced during the ceremonies and all the lessons I've learned from it.
Well, I had the funny experience, which I've got to share with you. And I became very good friends with the surgeon who was there. And, you become buddies, and our mats were next to each other, I think we did 5 journeys or whatever. And his last night was where I can't remember the name of the medicine, but it's really intense, just slightly different. Anyway, he had a big night and he was purging from all angles, really intensely too. And the next morning, and he was quite irritated with me a couple of times through the evening, and you just live with that and you're compassionate for them. But anyway, the next morning we were talking and he apologized for his behavior and also started describing quite graphic details his purging, and I kind of started laughing and also said, I guess you're a surgeon and you're not, it's kind of humbleness. It's humbling for you to have this experience when you're on this pedestal. But I could not stop laughing, which is probably purging. And he told me later that my laughing at him was actually part of his awakening as well. So that's why, Gary, I know lots of people have different experiences. That's why I wanted to do it in community. And because I think in community, other people's experiences is part of the medicine as well. So in community, you experience a lot more. And of course, that's part of the traditional way as well.
Yeah.
And I'm a seeker, so I go off on my own tangents. But there was something about that was so beautiful. Did you experience that in your...
Yeah, definitely. When I did it with a group of my friends and also with my wife, it takes the experience to another level. One of our previous guests, Dr. Steve Young, talks about that quite a lot of shamans during the ayahuasca experience would say, like, don't talk, don't interact with anyone. But there are some that allow you to talk. And yeah, like there's different things that he's experimented with. It's pretty unique. So for those that haven't heard the podcast, I do recommend to watch out for it. Dr. Steve Young also talks about incorporating ayahuasca into chocolate mud cake, and they can take out the purging part of the ayahuasca as well. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Purge to merge. That's one of Jerry's lines. Purge to merge. I think the purging is really important. And you also, I now realize that I was yawning the way my dad was.
Yeah.
My dad used to yawn a lot. In his final days, he yawned too. So that was part of the snake. It was part snake, part yawn.
Yeah.
I realized in how much people purge in different ways. People purge through talking, through words, through laughter, through singing, lots of different interesting. So
Nicky, for those that are not familiar with purging, what is purging?
Well, we think of like releasing, letting go of poison or things that don't serve. So, purging in the way we think of it is throwing up. So that's kind of, purging is throwing up. But it's also getting rid of things that you don't need. So your body is designed to get rid of things you don't need. So if you eat something off, you'll purge.
Yeah.
So the ayahuasca is actually getting rid of things that aren't good for you.
It's helping you do a cleanse. I've learned from Michael Singer that whenever we've got emotional issues, like let's just say as a child, our parents, of the best of intent, may say, like, don't cry, or don't be afraid, don't be scared, and we're suppressing those emotions rather than fully experiencing it. And each time that we've suppressed it, we've kind of hidden it or swept it under the carpet, swept it under the belly somewhere, and it's stuck in there as samskara, like trapped energy. And those trapped energies sometimes it will turn up as disease or disease and cancer, whatever. So the purging actually led a lot of these, what you call releasing a lot of these stuff that no longer needs to be there.
Yes. One of the things I've discovered as I've been developing my craft, I've been doing the Harvard MBA, is my funny way of saying it, with Marie Kondo's, I can actually feel, I walk into an elegant home and I can actually feel the trapped energy in the cupboards of the mess. I can feel the energy. And I've said to a few people, now that you know that I can feel the energy of the mess in your cupboards, I'm never going to be invited anywhere. But I've really noticed it. These just beautiful, elegant places that I'm blessed to be welcomed into. I can feel that energy. It's trapped in the things. Isn't that fascinating? So, yeah, and it's trapped emotion. It's trapped, it's trapped.
So when I first came across Marie Kondo, we got a lot of stuff around our house, at least in my perspective.
Yeah.
And hey, like my wife or someone told me to look it up, and I saw, hey, this nice way of folding clothes or tidying your closet. That's pretty cool. But yeah, let's just learn some techniques from this lady. But then when I started watching a couple of the videos, she said, like, give thanks to the clothes or stuff that you no longer need, your soft toys, your clothes, or whatever. Say thanks to it. Like, I just came back from a ski trip. My ski pants I probably worn for the last 10 years is completely like disintegrating, and I said I'm gonna like throw it out, and my kids reminded me, Dad, like, just make sure you remember to say thanks to it before you throw it out. And I thought, wow, now I know why this lady is so popular. It's not just about folding clothes, it's like incorporating consciousness and spirituality and being one with everything. But obviously, like you taught me, is about like Shintoism or Zen Buddhism. I'd like to learn more about, like, how do you go onto this journey, and more about what is this Marie Kondo method?
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to do this in two parts, because I want to tell you my journey, but I just want to link back to something you said, because I've only just connected with this. So she has a folding technique, which is a Japanese way of folding, smoothing things out, and then folding in a ritualistic way. And that ends up taking lots more space, and Japanese people have less space, etc. But I've only just connected this to something else I've learned. So you smooth the clothes and you give thanks, and then you fold them. And did you know that releases oxytocin, the smoothing? Isn't that fascinating? So there's a spiritual element, and there's also the neuroscience associated with it. And one of the thoughts I had is, can you imagine if you could teach that to children with ADD, or a person with ADD, a simple technique? And all of us, I've been using it lately just to calm myself down. If I have to have a difficult conversation, I'll go and fold something. I'll smooth it out, and then I'll fold it, and I'm ready for a difficult conversation. But back to how I got into this. I picked up the life-saving magic of tidying up 5 or 6 years ago. Five years ago, I think. I got stuck in Venice Beach. I couldn't get a plane out of California, and I got stuck for 3 days in Venice Beach, and I read these books. And I came home, and in the book she says, you don't know how it's going to happen, but things are going to change. And I came home and I thought, I'm actually quite tired. I throw things out, minimalist in my own head. I started tidying, and I thought, I'm going to sell my apartment. And 6 weeks later, I tidied, and 6 weeks later, I sold my apartment for huge money. Not huge money, but you know what I mean? It's like completely changed my life. And that is what she says is, you start tidying, and the world just opens up to you. So that was my first encounter with this just life-changing experience. And then in the middle of this sort of the Great Reset, I've been searching for my next step for a while. And every time I went down a path, I got deeply stuck. And I think it was because I was never in alignment with what I was doing. And I've seen that Marie Kondo was offering this, I call it the Harvard MBA of tidying. And I had thought in my mind, I'll go to London to do it. It does not sound glamorous and platinum partner-ish. I'll just go to London to learn how to fold T-shirts. And then I just saw it again at the beginning of COVID, and it just lightning bolt. That's it. That's perfectly aligned with everything that I believe in and that I'm doing. Like I said, Gary, it's the most humble vehicle that you can possibly imagine, tidying. And Marie's got this great quote, which I love. Cleaning is about confronting nature. Tidying is about confronting your own nature. And isn't that beautiful?
Wow.
You go through this very ritualistic practice that is a little bit linked to what we've learned from Tony and Platinum World. You need to make a commitment. You need to envisage your ideal lifestyle. And then there's a series of other steps. And the first time it's very rigorous qualification, this thing. You actually have to pass a pre-test tidying your own space, and they have to approve you. And I didn't do it in the right order. And I had to go back to the beginning again. I was incredibly irritated by the things because I hadn't done it properly the first time. And the books were irritating me. And that's just all part of the process. It's really quite incredible. But the other thing that's super interesting, again, connected to our platinum world, is in our material world, we're actually surrounded by all the decisions we've made in our lives. And they're not always obvious because as I've discovered, they're hidden away. You think that you're a tidy minimalist, but actually they're all around your home, or all these decisions you've made, dreams that you've had, and they're all embedded in your possessions. And in the beginning, the fundamental concept is you choose to surround yourself only with the things that spark joy for you now and that align with your future vision of yourself. So as I've learned with the clients I've been working with and with myself, in the beginning, they take forever to make decisions. Forever. And often the super fun thing is, as the sacred keeper of the practice, I can see that the decision they're making is completely out of alignment through their body language. They're making a decision that's completely out of alignment with their true nature. And so I do guide back, if gently, that thing that they kept, it's irritating and it doesn't fit. Wherever we go, it sticks out like a sore thumb, and they decide later to get rid of it. But as you go through the process, you make decisions faster and faster and faster. And the world just starts to open up. And it's like a tidying as medicine. It's like cleaning your windscreen, and things open up. This is my own experience, and also a client I'm working with at the moment who has gone down quite a few different paths. And that's embedded in her things. Lots of notebooks of things she started, and I have a similar thing. And you actually have to let go gracefully and with thanks of your dreams that didn't come to fruition. And that's really profound. And I feel so honored, actually, people are in their things. They're actually at their most vulnerable. I'm actually getting chills because I feel so blessed to be there for people. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of embarrassment and vulnerability, and ultimately courage involved in saying, I no longer am going to pursue this dream, and I'm going to let go of that thing that represented the dream to me. It's really quite a beautiful experience holding space for people in that.
Do you think is that one of the major reasons it takes people a long time to make the decision? Is it letting go of the dreams, or are there other reasons as well?
Oh, so many different reasons. Part of it is in the beginning, they don't have a strong, so one of, I love, Marie's got it, it's great. She calls the process joy checking. And in the beginning, people don't always have a great sense of what sparks joy for them now. And she also teaches you there's some practical things in your life that you need to have that maybe aren't. The extreme example is always the toilet brush, but you can actually flood that object with thanks for its purpose and come to love it. So I think it's because people don't actually have a strong sense. They're so stuck. I'm now reflecting back on my own experience. They're so stuck that they don't know what sparks joy for them. And they use different words, what they love, what makes them feel alive, what makes them thrive. I've learned to actually sparks joy doesn't resonate for people. So I listen for the word that actually meaning for them. And they don't have a strong sense of what that is. Even people who've been through all the personal growth work that we have in Tony World still may not have a strong sense of alignment or attunement to what that is. And that's, again, that's a, if you remember the beginning of the Date with Destiny video, I'm Not Your Guru, Tony says Date with Destiny is all about finding out who you are now and what you want to become, and letting go of those old versions of yourself, because it's about now and the future. And so again, that's just another beautiful integration with the work that you and I have both done. So many incredible experiences I'm having. As I said, it's actually, I feel actually quite blessed to have that experience of people opening up in that way to me and for themselves. Yeah.
So for yourself and your clients that has gone through the Marie Kondo method and incorporating, I guess, a lot of gratitude and
Yes.
and using the practice to clear up the windscreen,
Yes.
how have you observed from yourself and your clients their life started to change as a result?
Well, the first thing that happens is people start noticing things. So for a woman who has not had a relationship for a while because of the past relationship not ending well and being connected to that pain of that endless suffering and cycle, once we start to release the things and also send compassion to the former husband, which we have done with one of my clients, deep compassion, because it comes out in the objects. You've got this idea of this bastard, and then you open a drawer and find these things that remind you of how much he tried to show you love, even at the end when it wasn't working. And when we send him great compassion through the objects as well, and I do a ceremonial work too, it just, life starts to open up. And you start noticing the process is that, like I said, so humble. You start with clothes, which in theory are easier to get rid of, but they aren't. You start, if you're a woman, you actually, and you've been stuck in frumpy clothes, you start to notice beautiful things that would make you feel sexy and alive again and open you up to the possibility of a new man in your life. And also, clean the screen on all the things that kept you stuck in previous ideas of yourself. And you just get this great clarity, just huge clarity. You think you have to, what's my ideal lifestyle? You actually have to start with something, but it becomes very clear through the process.
And I think it's also, like from what you said, is developing like a way of life of living in the present moments, living with gratitude and just slowing down as well.
Yeah, it's very much, and I both have commercial backgrounds, business backgrounds. So now I'm going to talk about trends. It's very much connected to the trend of home being During COVID, that's been amplified, right? Home is the sanctuary, and simplicity and sustainability are very much on all our minds at the moment, and living with less, but choosing more wisely. That's one of the great insights for me through this COVID process, as time as well. I know lots of people have been medicating themselves through shopping. No judgment, but I have no desire to buy things. I, go through a very thoughtful process, and I know clients are going through this too, is being a lot more thoughtful about what they choose to bring into their homes after they've gone through the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before the awakening experience, like for me, it's like, yeah, we'll recycle some stuff. Like I wasn't like greeny by any stretch of imagination. No, it's like I go to this beautiful scenic place, like I will stop like 1 minute, take the selfie photos or whatever. Okay, let's go. Like I'm that person. Bushwalking, not for me. But like I've started gardening and growing veggie patches, and after veggie patches and spending more and more time there, that was the first phase. But the second phase is I started reading these books with the kids. It talks about protecting our planets, like a plastic fork like takes 1,000 years for it to break down in the environment. It emits greenhouse gases, whatever. So it made me even more conscious of what I'm buying, like the effect it have on this environment. And similar to you, no judgment, because I believe that Mother Earth will run its course, is powerful enough, is strong enough to stand up for herself, and everyone is going through a different path. So for me, it might be, hey, I need to save. For other people, it's like they needed to go through the phase that I've been through of like just consuming without any worry in the world, and that's the path. But for me, like right now, if I see I'm pushing products that doesn't need to be sold, or it preys on the fear of people that you're not enough and that you need to buy it, it just doesn't sit well with me anymore.
That's so profound, isn't it? It's a profound awakening. And I have a dear friend who's a very successful entrepreneur who's going through the same process too. I'm paying the price, he keeps saying, now, for all the shit I sold people. Sorry for the swears, Gary. But now he's sort of awakening to that side of life. But one of the things that's interesting to me about this process too is simple, but it's not easy. This is a Marie Kondo process. It's really simple, but it's not easy. It's definitely a mastery experience that you have to lean into. And, in the world of moods and mindset, there's pleasurable things and there's mastery activities. And this is a mastery activity. It's not a simple fix. You can't sit down and be fixed in a second. You actually have to lean into it, and it takes some time. And I've been great at the pleasurable things. I've got great at meditation and being in the present moment. Mastery hasn't been something I've leaned into quite as much. And I think you're probably close. You're more of a master than I am.
I'm dabbler.
A dabbler? Okay.
Master of dabbling.
And that's one of my fears as I head into this. I'll be really upfront with you about this process. It's a mastery experience.
Yeah.
It's not something that you do in one day. It takes a period of time, and the rewards are incredible, absolutely incredible. But it takes a little bit of time to do. And as an entrepreneurial sort, I think I want to be able to tell them, you can sit down in half an hour and I'm going to fix you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work that way.
I think like part of the awakening journey, like we've all got certain hobbies, interests and passion that we've picked up that forces us to slow down, whether that's for me, the gardening, the scrubbing of the toilets, and for you is the folding of the clothes, and the way that you describe it. This part I forgot is just like pushing the clothes out, like that part of just get over it. And like I think I'm doing it her way, but I'm not really.
That smoothing process, that's where the oxytocin gets released. And the mastery, I'm going to nerd out on you for a moment again. So mastery, that's leaning into things and actually physically leaning into things. I've got a neuroscientist who I'm sort of pretty big follower of. It actually is about the dopamine reward system. People always think dopamine's about pleasure, instant hits, but it's also about mastery and a reward for effort. And if you can train yourself to get dopamine from effort, growth mindset sort of style,
Yeah.
you are actually set up for life. And next again, we'll link back to our Tony stuff with identity. Then you create an identity for yourself of being the person who X. I'm the sort of person who, then you're a powerful force, aren't you? So you can see how it all ties, the little threads, the way we tie them. And I know that we're on the same path, and I know that you understand every single thing that I'm saying. Tie all those threads together.
Yeah, I've got this little brush that I've got around me. So if my work, whether getting too stressed, I'll use it to brush the dust, and it releases the dopamine like really effectively. I had this brush probably for like 20 years now. It hasn't left me.
That's incredible. I had a dopamine addiction, which I think we all have a bit of through social media. But when my dad was dying, I have a clean brain from games. I'd never played online games ever. And I got addicted to Candy Crush. Dopamine addict!
Yes. That's really well done.
But it's better to actually tie your dopamine rewards to effort. Because we need to be able to relax in the present, or be present and be happy in the present moment, but also tie it to effort as well. So it's fun stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. So Nicky, we've touched on your awakening experiences and through ayahuasca and a very detailed recollection of it. And we've gone on to your new business that you've launched and helping people free up their mind and the space with the Marie Kondo method. I want to just, I guess, conclude our podcast with touching on your father, because I know that you were very close with him, and I sense that was part of, by design, part of your whole awakening journey for that to happen at that exact moment. So what have you learned, experienced, or felt through the journey with your dad's last days on earth?
Oh, yes. Yes, you're very insightful, Gary. And my father's death actually did release me from, I think he needed to die for me to fully step into my power or myself. I don't know why that is. I really don't know why that is. You can probably, Dr. Freud, call the office. His death was incredible, really incredible. He had a really terribly painful end. Not just his final year was painful, but his final 24 hours were painful beyond measure. And he had sepsis, which if you have, it is infection, and the morphine wasn't working. And he was very afraid. Obviously, you've now got me into something emotional. And just being present for him at most painful moment in his life, and really just being there for him and holding him and touching him, because that helps, was probably the most sacred moment of my life. Yeah, very, very sacred. To walk through the valley of the shadow with another human is probably the most sacred thing that you can ever do in your life. This incredible gift. And my mother and I have had a difficult relationship, and even the last day was a little bit difficult. But since he died, our relationship has improved as well. And I actually went through the Marie Kondo experience with her too, which was really bonding. And she got to share stories with me, and I learned a lot about her. Even when we did papers, she said to me, Marie Kondo wants to throw away all her papers. And she said, because she's German, I've been a refugee, I need to be able to access my papers quickly in case I need to escape. Imagine hearing those sorts of stories. Those are the sort of big stories. So you want me to talk to my dad? Yeah, it was just, it was a very beautiful and sacred experience. He was still on my mind for a year afterwards. And my mother and I divided his ashes into three, and we did a little ceremony together at Balmoral. Sorry, I know it's illegal. And then we each got a third, and I took him on a magical mystery tour around Sydney to all the places that were important to him. And just even a sort of slightly mystical way, the ashes, the smoke from the ashes, it's almost like it looks like the spirit is going. And that was actually my experience. I didn't realize until about 5 months later, when I was talking to a friend whose wife died very young, quite recently, his spirit was released when I took him around Sydney to his favourite places, probably about 20 different places, and his spirit was released. And that is part of the beauty of my, the way this has all kind of come together. It's beautiful and painful, and that's life, isn't it? It's just life.
For me, if it wasn't for the awakening experiences and the insights I got from it,
Yes.
there's a lot of things that happen in this material world. Why does it have to happen like this? Like, why does your dad need to go through pain, and why now, and all this question, and we can't find answers from why beyond just the material stuff, the framework we've built for ourselves, ignoring a lot of thousands of years of ancient wisdom that they don't really just die. They live beyond that. In certain cultures like India, they celebrate the death because they believe that it's going to a better place. And seeing you've actually incorporating a lot of your awakening lessons, integrating, I don't know whether you consciously needed to do it, but you felt that like there's a time for everything, and this is everything is perfect. And the way that you described, even though the last 24 hours was extremely painful for him, that was a gift that for you to hold space, for you to felt that emotion.
And actually, Gary, I had a beautiful coach called Connie, who you may know also from our world, and she gave me a lovely gift too. She walked through the valley with me too through this final year, and she said to me, he gave you and your mother a beautiful gift too by being completely vulnerable and not hiding his pain and his fear in his final hours. So that was a gift, an incredible gift. He allowed us, he didn't have any magical final last words, the humorous or profound. He just gave his whole self as he was to us. And that was a gift, Gary, an incredible gift. And a beautiful circle, So, he did say something. I decided his final words were the words he spoke to his best friend. He had quite a lot of dementia in the end. Very funny, beautiful man who lost his marbles, most of his marbles. He said to his best friend about 2 or 3 weeks before, I gave it my best shot. And I thought, this incredible man, he gave it his best shot. And I thought, those are pretty good last words. And Jules, I just did Ho'opono, and oneness, blessing. But I think the most profound thing was knowing that he was able to be his whole self as he was in his final 24 hours. It was rough, but it was beautiful. And that is what death and life and death is about. It's painful and it's beautiful.
Definitely. Yeah. So I really honor you taking us through this journey and doing the work yourself and helping others with the Marie Kondo way and through a lot of the ceremonies that you're holding space for other people. So for people wanting to follow you and learn from you, what are some of your social media handles?
You know what? I'm a bit of a Twitter guru, but I haven't come out on Twitter yet. I'm still shy, Gary. You can find me at Nicky Will 100 on Twitter, and I'll tweet mostly about tech there. But I'll be coming out soon. And hopefully we'll include something in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll put a link to you. I think you've got a landing page that you're working
I'll
on.
have a landing page where people can connect to me, drop their email. I actually want to develop some, I want to share some of the tools I've learned, just give them out as a gift, and we'll put that in the show notes. At Nicky Will 100 is my tech, and watch me come out
Awesome.
soon on Twitter.
Awesome. Cool. So thank you so much. And until next time, God bless. Namaste, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gary. I honor you for what you've built here and allowing those of us who've had found our vehicles for expressing all of this spirituality stuff, for allowing us to share it on this beautiful podcast. It's fantastic. Thank
It's
you
been
so
an
much.
absolute joy. Thank you.